what do you feel about your body? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you wish you could skip the whole bodily experience and just be sucked up into heaven? Just your soul floating around on a cloud somewhere? And how do you feel about your desires? Do you feel guilty about experiencing pleasure? Well, if you're not a fan of your body and maybe don't know what to do with your desires, chances are you have a background in purity culture, or at least we're adjacent to some of those ideas. What we're tackling in today's episode is a better theology of the body and a better theology of desire so that we can capture a good Christ-centered view of sexuality. Yes, this episode today does cover some topics that might be a little inappropriate for younger children. Use your best discretion. And so we are going to talk about sex, body, desire with our amazing guest today, Dr. Kelly Edmiston, who's the lead pastor of the Vineyard Church in Stafford, Texas. She holds a doctorate of ministry from Portland Seminary, is a writer, speaker, and theologian whose work explores the intersection of faith, the body, and Christian spirituality. Her latest book is Shame-Free Sex Talks, guiding kids to live out their faith, love their bodies, and understand the goodness of sex. So, let's get into today's episode. I'm Jake Doberenz, and this is Christianity Without Compromise, a podcast for Christians who love Jesus but are tired of culture war faith. Now, let's get to rebuilding a faith that actually looks like Jesus. Kelly Edmiston, thank you for being on Christianity Without Compromise today.
Yay, thanks for having me. So glad to be here.
Yeah, we have an interesting topic, exciting, dare I say. We got a fun one.
Yep.
Might get into the PG-13 territory, but that is A-okay, because we got to talk about this, unfortunately. This is a subject we have to address. And if we don't, we start adding on all sorts of terrible beliefs, right? And that doesn't help anybody.
Yep.
Yep. Well, we love stories on this podcast, and I want to start with a story where you experienced one day lying on a park bench, you're feeling the warmth of the sun, the grass beneath your feet, just enjoying being alive, and then you felt guilty about it. So take us into that moment and kind of diagnose, why were you feeling this way? Why did this moment hit so deep?
Yeah. So this was probably almost 10 years ago now, maybe, 8 or 9, 10 years ago. And so I was in the middle of parenting like toddlers and newborn. And so this park bench was really meaningful to me, Jake. I would literally escape my house, like maybe right when my husband got home, and I just need a minute. And so I walked down. It's really close to my house. It's in front of this man-made lake. In Texas, Jake, we only have, pretty much ugly man-made lakes and hot and humid. But I have this moment where I'm stretched out on the park bench. I'm feeling the warmth of the sun. I'm watching like the waves ripple. It's this truly magical moment. And even though it was hot and humid, the warmth from the sun felt amazing. The grass under my feet it was almost this like, I want to say erotic experience. And I had a moment where I was trying to take it all in. And then meeting that moment of pleasure was this tinge of guilt. Like, what are you doing here? You have so many other things that you need to be doing. You have children to take care of. You have a house that's disgusting you need to clean. And it just hit me because the moment was so incredibly ordinary. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was enjoying being alive, engaging all my senses. But it was this recognition of something had been deeply formed in me to believe that my own pleasure was not to be trusted. Like there's something that I was suspicious with myself. Like, why are you letting your body rest and feel so good right now? You should be being productive. And so this is all sort of the backdrop of, I'm also doing research at this point on purity culture, on sexuality. And it was this moment of kind of when all the stars aligned, when I'm like, oh, okay, well, it is pure. It's in part, purity culture has formed me not just teaching me about sex, but it's formed me in a way that has taught me to fear my own pleasure, to distrust the simple, sacred experience of being human, of being alive. And so it was devastating in a way, but also incredibly helpful because it became this jumping off point to like, oh, I want to dig into this, because you know how it is with formation. Like with things that have formed us, it's sort of just the water that we've swam in. And until we can become that fish that sort of jumps out of the water and looks at the water, we can't diagnose what's going on, and we certainly can't solve any problems. And so that was a core moment for me in diagnosing how purity culture had formed that in me, this distrust of my body, this fear of pleasure, things like that. So yeah, very ordinary moment.
Okay. No, this is a great jumping off point for the whole discussion today, because we want to talk about a theology of our bodies. We want to talk about desire, something that, as you said, like we're kind of taught like to be suspicious of feeling good or something like that. Mm-hmm. You know, carry your cross and just beat yourself up all the time. Or
right.
but
it should hurt. It should be painful.
Right, yeah. Let's talk about this thing, because you just mentioned like purity culture. We think of it as like rules about sex or something like that. But there's deeper things being taught here, and one of those is kind of a theology of the body. It tells you
that's right
how to experience your own flesh suit, if you will.
That's right.
So what was purity culture teaching us about our bodies or desires, what it means to be human? What are those messages that you were researching and that maybe you grew up with learning about?
Yeah, so the primary message of purity culture as it relates to a theology of the body was/is, I don't know where we are on purity culture. I know I've left it. I know most of my network, we've deconstructed it, we've left it behind. But I'm going to say is, because I still think it's absolutely at work. The message of purity culture is your body is a barrier between you and God. So it really reinforces this. You can call it Greek dualism. You could call it Gnostic heresy. You could call it Plato or Neoplatonic philosophy. I mean, you could call it a lot of things, right? But what it does is it teaches that your spirit or your soul, that which pertains to the spirit, is good, holy, and then your body, your flesh, is dangerous. And so what purity culture taught us is that we need to leave the body behind so we can get as close to God as possible. And the closer we get to God, the further we get from our bodies. So it created this divorce, this disintegration between the body and the soul. And so holiness, therefore, in purity culture means transcending your desires or suppressing them, getting as far away from the body as possible. And so therefore sexuality, especially for women, Jake, I'm sorry here, but especially for women, sexuality became something that we needed to guard, contain, and eventually hand over to our husband. And so purity culture, it created a disembodied theology. Our bodies are objects of lust. Therefore, we need to manage them, control them, hide them. And that has shaped our sexuality, certainly, but it has also shaped our relationship with pleasure, how we relate to food, how we relate to rest, Sabbath. Like, how many believers right now in America, like, diligently practice Sabbath? It's a command, Jake. It's a command in Scripture. Why do we not practice it? It's because of our distorted relationship with pleasure. It's impacted how we relate to our own emotional lives. Like right now, I'm in a sermon series on permission to feel. We're teaching through the Psalms. And people, like, it's been so revelatory for people. They're like, oh, there's this whole resource in Scripture. Yeah, like, a million of them, Psalms, like right there in the middle of the Bible, that give us a language for every season in the life of faith, as like Brueggemann would say. And so it's even distorted our relationship with our feelings. But purity culture specifically taught us to live disconnected from our bodies. And when you're disconnected from your body, Jake, you're actually less equipped to make wise decisions, not more equipped, right? And that's what we've seen. We know purity culture was a bust. It did not delay, most people, this is research supported, they did not delay sex, And when they did have sex, they did not report higher levels of pleasure in sex. And so purity culture is a bust. It didn't work. But that's what it taught us, to disconnect from our bodies. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We had Sheila Gregoire on our podcast earlier this year. We talked all about... Didn't work.
She told it. She told it. She told it. I know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't work.
Didn't work. Yeah, I mean, I am a guy, and I grew up with a little different messages on those things. Still the kind of the same thing, but maybe not as, I don't know, restrictive or not as... nobody ever said when I take my shirt off at the pool that was a stumbling block. Let me just put it that way. Like
You're an object of lust.
Yeah, I was not an object of lust.
It's a great point.
Reasons.
It's a great point, Jake. I mean, truly, men were not given that message. You can take your shirt off, you can wear whatever you want to wear, but a girl, no matter her body type or her body size, like you got to cover it up, keep that T-shirt on or whatever, which is hilarious. But yeah, didn't work.
Yeah. Oh boy. Oh boy. Well, I think it'd be really appropriate, and I think you could help us do this, kind of distinguish between sort of repression and chastity as we transition to now. We want to talk about, okay, what does work, what is good.
Yeah.
Help us break down here, because there's some confusion maybe between these ideas. There's always people that pendulum swing into the let's throw off no guidelines about sex or sexuality or something like that. So begin here. Help us cast that vision of healthy Christian chastity by kind of distinguishing that between like repression.
Yeah. And this is Dr. David Gushee. He says chastity is being morally directed in our sexual choices versus impulse directed. So chastity is having a morality that's guiding our decisions, and for me, and for Gushee too, an ethical underpinning for that morality. So we're not just saying, hey, sex within the context of covenant is God's best plan. That's the moral code. But the ethics underpinning that is the why. Why is that the best way? Why is covenant theology so important, which I outline in the book in detail. But so that's what chastity is. Repression is repression is the result of purity culture. Repression is when we believe the message of purity culture, which is the body is a barrier between us and God. So we shut down. We disconnect from our bodies. We ignore our desires. This is the woman who I work with couples all over. For the last 20 years, I've been in vocational ministry. So a lot of my work is with couples in the realm of sexual flourishing. So repression is the example of a woman usually raised in purity culture, who's in a loving marriage, has a loving and supportive, attentive husband, and he's loving and supportive and attentive within the context of their sexual relationship, and they're married 10 years, and she's never experienced an orgasm. This is repression. This is not because her husband is doing anything wrong. This is because she has spent her entire life believing that her body is bad, that sex is forbidden, and no one ever told her about her body's capacity for pleasure. And that pleasure is good and holy and from God. So that's repression within the context of marriage. Chastity is being morally directed, living from being formed by a theology of the body that is more expansive, more beautiful than what purity culture is giving us. And that's what we want to be. We want to be people of chastity, married or unmarried.
Right, yeah, for sure. I find that extremely helpful, because that is something, as we, as I told you before the show started, like a lot of our audience here is kind of in that deconstructing space, and we're trying to figure out, what do we do with this? And there can be a temptation to just say, no rules,
throw it out.
Let's go crazy. And you're not necessarily saying that, but we control our impulses, and personally big fan of ethics, so to always think we should think about that.
Absolutely.
So
So chastity, and chastity is something that's formed, and so the framework that I'm coming from Scripture is really threefold: covenant, community, and consent. And so those things have to be, that's the ethical underpinning. Those things have to be present as we make choices about sex. And then the theology there is, it's the Hebrew nephesh. It's the God breathing life into a human body at creation. It's not Our bodies are not just these containers for the soul. Our bodies are a part of the soul, right? The soul, and this is Willard, the soul is the body, mind, and heart. So what we do with our body, the choices we make about sex, married or unmarried, absolutely matter. Absolutely matter.
Yeah, for sure. I think, honestly, like, if I had to, like, pinpoint some moments in my kind of spiritual journey, one of the first moments in college, and more so in my master's degree, but was theology professors telling me, like, okay, we've gone off track with this weird dualism thing, where, you're just a brain on a stick or something like that.
Right, right.
A container for the soul. And once I realized that is not biblical, that's not a good way to view things, it really changed my whole understanding of humanity.
It will totally shape how you see being human. For the Hebrew mind, you know this, you don't have a body. You are a body. You are a living being. I mean, that's a theology of embodiment. That's not just a spiritual idea. We see it at creation. It's our origin story. And that's where we have to start when we're talking about reconstructing a healthy, expansive theology of the body. That's where we have to start.
Yeah. Well, let's talk more about desire, because you said desire's good or something like that. What? You touched on it a little bit, but that is something like desire feels too close to like lust or something that we've said is a big no-no. It feels scary. It feels like not good. But kind of in your understanding, desire can become kind of a resource for spiritual formation. It could be a good thing. So can you kind of elaborate on what's a good way to think about desire?
Yeah. So my background, my doctorate is in spiritual formation. So when I'm talking about desire, I am talking about that eros, like that, the erotic, which is where we get the word erotic. And so in my framework, desire is formed. So what I desire can give me information about what is forming me, And so this is like the James K.A. Smith stuff, Like he's saying desire is formed through practices, what we practice. My big story here is, my kid, plays baseball every single day, practicing through the summer, wearing everybody out. We're so annoyed with baseball, having to sit on metal bleachers. They're wearing polyester pants. They're 11. It's 1,000 degrees, and they love it. And so my son, he's going through this all summer. They lose. And then the very next day he wakes up and we're like, yes, finally we get to sleep in. Finally we get to have a normal summer. And the very next day, baseball's over. He wakes up and he's like, Dad, I want to go hit some baseballs. And we're like, oh my gosh, so exhausted. But the point is, like, his practices, his habits, his routines had formed in him this desire for baseball. This is how desire works, right? And so what I'm saying is desire is from God, not selfish, self-destructive expressions of desire, but the desire itself, the longing in our bodies, is part of how God made us. And when it's led by the Spirit, when it's brought into submission to Christ, every area of our life, body, mind, and heart, that desire can be a doorway for knowing God more. And so like let's say we have a deviant desire. The problem there is not the desire. The problem to diagnose or to process through would be, what is it in my life, in my practices, in my habits, and in my routines that has formed that desire? What is that? Because the desire in and of itself, or whatever, there's something underneath that. A desire for connection, a desire for intimacy, a desire for whatever, to feel loved. That's what we have to bring to God and process through and get to the bottom of, and know that our desires are from God, meant to lead us towards God. So my example is like, you have a preteen boy who's struggling with lust. Well, we don't shame him. Like, oh, that's a horrible desire. You shouldn't want to have sex with whatever, your girlfriend. And it's like, no, you should. You should want to have sex. Like, that's a desire that God gave you. How can we see that desire formed for goodness, for beauty, bringing that to God? So that's how I talk about desire within this framework.
Yeah, I like that. Again, that's it's a different vision than we maybe inherited, but I like it, absolutely. Well, I'm really curious to know your hot takes on Song of Songs. While we're on the subject of desire and body and pleasure and all of that.
Yes.
I mean, there is a wider, there are more biblical examples and language around these topics than maybe we care to see all the time, or just weren't even taught that way. We just missed it because that's just not how we were taught or formed, right?
Yeah.
So talk to us about what we're missing, and then, talk to us about Song of Songs and all that good stuff in there.
The Song of Songs is such a beautiful resource for understanding this, what I call spiritual sexuality, the integration of spirituality and sexuality, instead of this divide that purity culture gave us. The Song of Songs is a beautiful resource for understanding that, because it's unashamedly erotic, right? The lovers are in a garden, and so we have this beautiful, Garden of Eden imagery. Of course, gardens all throughout Scripture, all throughout the Hebrew Scriptures, gardens, of course, are so important. They're in a garden, which is erotic. They're naked. They're delighting in each other's bodies without shame. We have a whole case for egalitarian marriage here, Jake, because the woman is the one initiating. The woman is the one speaking. I think it's like over 80% of the text is the woman speaking. She's celebrating her desire without apology. They have a whole community surrounding them. This is missed a lot of times. But of course, in the Hebrew context, like, they understood sex and marriage and partnership being something that's supported by the community, celebrated by the community. The community is affirming her participation, their participation in the love story. And the church, generally speaking, as you've named here, we skip it. we skip it entirely, or we spiritualize it into something that's unrecognizable. Oh, well, it's about Jesus and the church. Oh, okay. It's strictly allegorical. Okay. And what we miss here is a vision for sexuality that comes straight from the text. We miss the countercultural witness of this poetry that honors a woman's pleasure. We definitely don't want that in the church. We don't want a woman's voice or pleasure prioritized. And of course, this was born out of a deeply patriarchal culture. So that's important, And we miss the communal dimension of sexuality, the idea that sexuality was never meant to be private or shameful or, my sex, my choice, my body. As long as I'm not hurting anybody, I can do whatever I want. This kind of nonsensical narrative that we see in the culture right now, we miss that. And then we miss the basic biblical affirmation that delight, longing, pleasure are not things to just be tolerated, but things to be savored within a covenant, within a partnership. And so the Song of Songs really tells us, this is what God intended. This is God's best plan. God is for your pleasure. God is for egalitarian, marriage, sex and marriage. Mm. So I think we miss. That's a lot of what we've missed. But I think we lose a lot of that when we ignore Song of Songs and fail to really study it, really dive in.
That's a good one. Yeah, it is. I mean, I think we miss this a lot in Scripture. My context, a lot of my study has been with Paul, who some people have some problems with on all sides of the spectrum, and. There are a lot of people that do, he's kind of anti-sex or whatever. And I mean, in 1 Thessalonians 4, it talks about don't have sex with the lustful passions like the Gentiles do and stuff. And so I wrote papers in grad school against some scholars that are he said, don't enjoy sex. I don't actually think that's what he said. So there's a lot of things in Scripture where if we miss the context, if we miss the wider story of Scripture, then we're going to see desire as bad. When, to your point, there's a deviant part that's not good. Yeah. But what's it really saying? So
absolutely, Jesus and Paul don't help us. I mean, they're both celibate.
Well, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
And so you could make, if you just have Jesus and Paul, you could definitely make a case for anti-sex, anti-pleasure. Sure, yeah. But absolutely, I think we have to, just like with any issue, right? This is why going to the Bible, one of the questions I answer is what does the Bible teach about sex? And the answer is Not a whole lot. I mean, we have to be careful if we're going to the Bible as a rule book, as an instruction manual. Of course, we can extract one text and make a case for anything, just like with any other doctrinal issue, women, all of it. And so we definitely have to be careful to take the whole counsel of Scripture to form a theology of the body or a healthy theology of sex. But yeah, that's a great point.
I mean, I think we have a similar religious background. So it was like, what's the command, example, inference,
100%.
and all of that. And,
Yeah.
and that doesn't always lead to what actually is the story being told here. If you just pick
That's
a couple
right.
scriptures.
What's the story being told? That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we just want chapter and verse. Give us chapter and verse.
Exactly.
You got it.
Exactly. Oh boy, for sure. So, well, we're not quite done here, but I want to wrap up some of the main parts of the interview today, and I kind of want you to, well, can you preach for us here is actually what I'm asking here. Like, give us this final charge and let somebody know if they're struggling with the shame, they don't know what to do with their body, with their desires. Where do they begin?
Yeah. So I am a preacher, but I'm also a spiritual director, formation person. So actually what I would do is to the person who's struggling, I actually wouldn't preach to you because I don't want you to take this in just with your mind and like intellectually ascend to what I'm saying. What I really want people to do is I want them to get in their bodies. So many of us, and probably so many people listening, we live disembodied. We are so disconnected. And part of it is from our disembodied theology we've been given. A lot of it is from that. There's other factors at play here, of course. There's ways we experience trauma, ways we experience the world. There's body issues that we all have, body shame that lives in our bodies. And so much, all of this are barriers to this. But I want people to embody this. And there's a simple practice, and I lead my staff through it actually all the time. They get really tired of it. But I even lead our teenagers through it, young and old. Anybody can do this. But it's a spiritual practice of just being with God and your body. For, let's say, this week, somebody could do this for 5 minutes. Like, you could set a timer for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, but you could extend this to more than an hour. Some people like to do this practice of being with God in their body outside. If you live in Houston, Texas, I don't recommend that today. But if you live in a beautiful place, you should. You should go outside and just be present to your body. It's kind of like what I did on the park bench that I didn't even know I was doing. But I want people listening to sit or lay down and just engage all of your senses with God. Take some deep breaths. And as you breathe, recognize the very breath of God, the Spirit of God, giving life to your body right now in this present moment. Deep inhale in, deep exhale. I want you to become present to your 5 senses, okay? What you see, what you hear, what you feel, what you might be tasting. It might be nothing if you're in the middle of a spiritual practice, but that's okay. Maybe you have a cup of coffee or something with you. And what's the other one? Touch. What you're touching, what you're feeling. So if you're on a park bench, if you're in a chair, if you're outside in the grass, I want you to become aware, attentive to those senses, and I want you to just be with God in that place. This is a contemplative practice of just being with God in your body. And anybody can do that this week. And then the work there is just to notice what comes up. Just become aware. What do I feel? What do I hear? What do I taste? What am I touching? And then if you're a journaling person, jot those things down. But that's a very simple way of just saying, no, you know what? I'm going to reclaim that I am a embodied soul and a soulful body. I'm going to have this experience with Creator God, God of the universe, who loves me and is attentive to me and is with me, closer to me than my very breath. And I'm going to have that today, right now, for about 5 minutes. That is an excellent, simple spiritual practice anybody can do to begin to bring that integration, that spirit and body integration. That's what I would say.
Great. Yeah, that is a good beginning point toward that healthier integration for sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's move into plugs and links. Tell us, where are you found on the interwebs? Talk about your book, all of those things. And then we'll circle back to the real last question, where you can advise us with another practice. Tell us where you want to point people to.
Yeah, I think the best place is drkellyedmiston.com. Very simple, just my name. And that is where people can go to find information about subscribing to my Substack, which is free. I'm putting articles out every week. And then also information about all my socials. I'm really active on Instagram, but I'm on all the things. YouTube, TikTok even, which for me, a millennial, is a stretch. Facebook, but that's where people will find all the information about following me and getting more information about the book, and also just other content that I'm putting out. Sermons, lots of things, lots of content.
Beautiful. Great. We'll link to that. Awesome. Well, as I mentioned, the real question, which can be related to sex and shame and bodies, or it could be whatever you have on your mind. Let me read it to you just as I read it to everybody else that gets on the show. So,
okay.
As we close, leave the audience with just one practical action they can do this week to live out their faith fully for Jesus.
Yeah. One practice. I mean, besides the being with God, I would say I would love for people to, and this is maybe more than one thing, but I would love for people to begin like reciting the values of spiritual sexuality. So I'll give those. They're very, very simple. I'm actually having stickers made with them, but they're very simple. And I really believe if every person got these values like in their guts, like not just in your head, but get these in your guts, you can begin to live a more integrated, whole, more expansive, beautiful life. You know, not just a theology of the body that would lead to flourishing, all of it. And those are: I am my body. My body is holy. Pleasure is good. God is everywhere. And what I do with my body matters. So I think if rehearse those, write them down, meditate on them, hold them up next to Scripture, hold them up next to your experience, talk about them with your friends. I think that would be an excellent way to walk with Jesus this week.
I like it. And yeah, let's get some stickers going. I like that idea. It's a good one. You might have stickers by the time this comes out, so everybody can.
I'll send you some, Jake. I'll send you some.
There we go. Well, thank you, Kelly, for being on today. We really appreciate your time. And this was maybe the most fun conversation I've had about sex and body and desires, probably.
Good.
So, yeah. And I know our listeners enjoyed it as well. I definitely want to encourage our listeners to share out this episode. Obviously, you check out her book as well, but share out this episode to anybody that maybe needs a good refresher on how the Bible views these things. Your friends that grew up in purity culture, slide this one over to them too.
Yep.
This is a jumping off point. Yes. And then you can get, shame-free sex talks and all of that as an additional resource. So, excellent. But again, thank you so much for being on Christianity Without Compromise today.
Thanks so much for having me.
This episode of Christianity Without Compromise was hosted by me, Jake Doberenz, and produced by Theophany Media, my podcast production company. If this conversation served you, please rate and review the show and share it with a friend and help others find it. You can also subscribe at jakedoberenz.substack.com to get email updates with new episodes every Tuesday and my often humorous theological reflections on Fridays. And as always, don't just listen, live it. Live out that Christianity without compromise. Thanks for listening.